Hey there. Good morning. If you're watching this in the morning. This morning for me in foggy San Francisco. Filmed a lot of these other videos during a holiday break, so trying to fit these in wherever I can before capitalism kicks in. Yeah, this is my series on Cirklon Aux Events, where I'm exploring them through reading the manual, doing a little bit of upfront work as well, because just reading the manual hasn't necessarily paid off in terms of me figuring things out in a succinct way. And yeah, today I'll be using the Cirklon with the Digitone II, potentially the third wave. And I think we'll be discussing pattern control events, of which there are a handful. I'm going to try to knock out a couple of these videos, the final two videos, before I get into accumulator events. Yes, okay. So we're going to look at pattern control in this video. This current sequence is the Digitone II sequenced by the Cirklon, just bypassing the Elektron sequencer. I'm not doing much interesting with this. I actually made this for a Brian Eno songwriting workshop, which was quite cool. Mostly just cool to see Brian Eno rant about modern life for 2 hours. The only interesting thing I'm doing here, and it's actually using a global control aux event, is muting and unmuting this little percussive thing. So on track one, I just have this percussive hit, just repeating. But then on track two, I have aux D set to mute track one on step 13. And then on step one, unmute it. So two different aux events. It would be cool if that was a single aux event, in my opinion. I guess this gives you more flexibility because you can mute and unmute different things, but it would be nice to have like a toggle event. Whatever. Let's get into pattern control though. We'll just keep on going with this simple pattern. I know the lighting in here is a little wonky today. I think it's okay on the Cirklon, which is what matters, but I don't have a good lighting filming setup, so I rely on real light, and like I said, it's very foggy. So this event group is nice and succinct. It allows you to modify pattern settings. And I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. And set direction is the one that I've been using the most. To make, like, I think in a previous video I was making sort of a upwards, downwards arpeggio with it. So we'll experiment with that. But let's add a couple more notes to this pattern. One thing I've been doing is sort of jamming, as I've actually been like, believe it or not, these videos are making me use the Cirklon a lot more, which was the whole point of me doing them for myself. A workflow that I'm finding nice with the Digitone is sort of like jamming what I want on the Digitone keyboard. You could obviously do this with an external MIDI keyboard and then just record it in, but I'm just kind of figuring out what I want and then I sequence it in. Yeah, I have a little bit of delay on the 5th and 13th step just to create a little bit of movement. Offset might be a better word. The Cirklon calls it delay, but just since we're using actual delay send effects as well, I'll call it offset. Oh, and also notably, just because this is an educational series, it has nothing to do with pattern control. But this is the first time I've actually done this. And partially, like this Brian Eno workshop, we had 20 minutes to create a composition. This is what I created. And what I did was I just created 2 bars. And then I just have each set to repeat twice, which I think is kind of a cool way to quickly compose stuff if you just want the same thing longer but then want to implement a chord change or whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to loop the first bar, which I don't remember how to do, so I'm just going to shorten it. And then the first event, set last step absolute. It's going to get annoying very quickly. Let's just pause. Set last step absolute sets the last pattern step. So we're just going to put that on the final aux note because we might want to randomize that. And let's do it on the first step. And we'll just set it to 4. I'm going to turn it off. And then I'm going to let it play 16 steps. And then when it loops back around, I'm going to have it flipped on. And that way it'll set the total pattern length to 4. So what should happen is it'll play all 16 steps. And then when it comes back around, when it actually hits the aux event, it'll just play 4. So what we're doing is just telling it last step is now 4. And an easy, simple, generative, whatever thing you could do here is randomize that value, that aux D value. Very cool. So we're just setting it 100. I realize that I've been using percentages wrong this whole time because it's between 0 and 127. So when it's at 50, it's not 50%. Every bypass, every time it passes that first step, it's setting a new step length for the pattern, which is really cool. And you can turn down the probability of that taking place. Or not it's going to happen every time because we're not using a gate mask. We could do that as well. This is pretty, this is the most extreme pattern value, pattern last pattern step randomization we could do, so I don't think a gate value is going to be that interesting. I'm assuming it's setting it between 0 and 16, because that's how long. Yeah, we'll just assume that. Oh, it says range 1 to 16. Look at that. Okay, let's... So I've set it back to 16. Which I think you can also just do by... So now it's set to 6. I believe if I stop it and turn it off, it like inherits the original value for the pattern. Cool. So just like stopping the pattern altogether sort of resets everything. And in order to have it set to 6 or 4 or whatever, you actually use the like last plus step value to change the pattern length. So 2 different areas operating on the same value, I guess. The same like pattern value of last step. Okay, the next one adds a given value to the last step. So it's last step relative. And for this one, I'm going to set the first step. I'm going to set the last step of the pattern to 1. So without this aux event turned on, it's just going to play the first step. Actually sounded cooler than I expected. Sorry, I need my green tea as I'm waking up. But what we're going to do is this adds or subtracts, but we're going to do an addition of 2 each time it rounds. Basically, each time it hits step 1, it's going to add 2 to the last step. So what should happen is the first time it'll be step 1. It'll be 1 step long, and then 3 steps long, and then 5 steps long, and then 7 steps long until it reaches 16. This sounds very cool, but I don't know what it's doing. Because it does seem like it's adding... It seems like it's doing it up to 5. Okay, let's try it the reverse way. I don't know what's happening. So now it's set to 16 steps. The pattern's set to 16 steps. Every time it goes around, it should subtract 1. I think it's because we have some accumulator stuff. I'm not sure if these are the default accumulator values or whether I was messing with this. But I mean, this isn't an accumulator event, so... The examples I've seen of this and the other times I've played with it, it's sort of like it hasn't reset. Let's just try on a new track real quick. I'm going to try on a new song. I'm going to delete this. Because that's why I don't finish music. I just delete. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, it is working. So clearly I just had something wonky set in that. Probably just the pattern. Probably didn't need to blow up the whole thing, but sometimes you gotta burn it down to build it up. Okay. So we see what's happening here. Very cool. Each time, so we start from nothing. We start from a value of 1. The last step is just step 1. So turning off this aux event, just play step 1 over and over. Once we flip it on, every time it goes around, we're gonna add 2 now. So the first time it'll be 1 steps long, 3 steps long, 5 steps long, up to 16. It has a range value of plus minus 15, which makes sense because 1 plus or minus 15 is, well, 16 positive. Whatever. It's too early. It's not that early. It's 8. But it's Monday. So now it's subtracting 2 every time. And of course, we could randomize this as well, but we're not going to because my confusion is already making this a little bit long. All right, third event, set normal T-base. Set T-base to one of the standard settings. And then the following one is set triplet T-base. So the T-base, for lack, I don't know the correct definition. I just think about it as like the speed in which the pattern plays. And I'm assuming the 16 is like 16 notes per bar. Or you can think about it as like 16 steps per... Let's just go with 16 notes. Like each step on here is equivalent to 1/16. Let's hope that's correct. Apologies if it's not. But if you're here, you already know about T-Bass. This is just going to switch it up on a per step basis. So let's add some more notes again. I kind of wish I'd brought over that other pattern, but... Okay, and what we can do we're gonna have the first step reset it back to 16. We're gonna have the fifth step turn it to 32. So the first and ninth step we're gonna have it set back to 16, which is what we programmed this in at. On the fifth step, we're having it change to 32. So the time base is now 32 from steps 5, 6, 7, 8. And then on 13, it's changing to 64. Interestingly, I don't know if you can see this. Not super well, because I'm not zoomed in enough, because I don't know how to do that with my iPhone camera. Also, the highlighting is really hard to read. But the first value of this, 0 is 32. 16, 8, 4, 2, I'm like incrementing the value. 1, and then 16, and then 64, so it's not in like a ascending or descending order. Again, probably just how it was programmed. Maybe some of these were added later, and Colin didn't want to... Probably some legacy code reasons. But hopefully it's pretty obvious what's happening. Maybe a little more obvious now. I'm setting the 13th step to have a T-base of 8. So it kind of slows at the end. So 16, 32, 16, and 8. Not a terrible, weird rhythm. And obviously that's modifying like the overall step length as well, because, or like the bar length, because it's changing the rate, so like it's not just 16 even steps. And then just switching it to triplet T-bass, we'll choose from the triplet values. There's also like this polyrhythm T-bass option, but that's not assignable. And again, you can't really see this with the highlighting, but okay, so we're actually going to turn this off. I turned off all the aux events and I just put it on a triplet, a 16 triplet T-bass. And I'm just now using that like click track as a metronome basically. So it's 1/5. Like that's just a metronome. So this is what just a 16 triplet T-bass sounds like. And then on step 1, I have it changing to an 8 triplet, and then on 9 back to a 16 triplet. And unlike the non-triplet aux event, these values are like you start at 64, so you start at the largest, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1. So it goes in a more logical order. Great. You could randomize this, you could gate it, all the fun stuff. I'm not really a triplets kind of guy, so I probably wouldn't use this one specifically. Yeah, I could actually see myself exploring the normal T-base event with maybe my modular, get it closer to how some like there's some modular sequencers, like, I mean, really any of them that are like sort of lean into the modular thing, like the RYK, I think it's the M185. You can change speeds, I believe. I've never actually used one, but I've used the Metropolix from IntelliGel. You can definitely do stuff like that. With Rene, the Make Noise Rene, you can, I think you can just kind of like do whatever with it because it moves at your gate input, the speed of that. So you could, the deeper I get into Cirklon stuff, the more I'm grateful that I've already done like a pretty deep dive into the modular world over the last 6 or 7 years, because it helps me sort of wrap my head around both how to combine aux events and what sort of some of the possibilities are in a more musical context. I think if I didn't have more experience, this is driving me crazy. If I didn't have a more musical understanding of modular principles and sort of like using these building blocks to create something that can actually be used in a musical context, I'd probably just be like, what's the point of any of this? Why would you want to set the speed of your sequence on a per step basis? And the final one, set direction. Let's do it. As you've heard, doing all these like wonky things, it eventually, like if you put it back to 16, it'll sort of reset the bar. I believe you can turn that off. I kind of like it on. And because I like it on, I don't know how to turn it off. Probably just in the menu. Whatever. We're gonna clear this out, which you can do with delete pattern. I'm gonna set the final, the aux D. If you can't tell, I'm like finally wrapping my head around the ordering of things. So I'm just kind of defaulting to aux D because I might want to modify it with earlier aux events, which will then process down. God, I hope that's correct. I'm doing a lot of talking in this video. You friends are my first conversation in a day of many work meetings. I know there's an arpeggiator in here. I don't know how to use it. I thought this would drive me crazy, kind of like building out arpeggios with the sequencer, but I love it. It is, I find it to be really fun. So I have these 4 ascending notes. I'm gonna copy them. Paste them on step 5. I want it to go an octave up. I could do that with an aux event, but I actually like that. I don't even want it fully ascending. And I've set the last step at 8. I think I did this in an earlier video or had something playing. And so it's just playing these first 8 steps. I'm going to set the first step to always reset to be forward. And the 8th step to reverse. So it goes up and it comes down. And then now that we have this arpeggio, we can change the rate of it with the T bass. This would actually be a great time to use triplets. And now I understand why I personally would use triplets. That's great. Okay, so you can see this useful to create arpeggios. We'll just stick with this example. But I'm gonna place a randomly masked, randomized direction in the middle of it. So I'm gonna set aux B to randomize the gate. Randomize mask of aux D, so set the probability of whether it happens. And then I'm going to set aux C to randomize the value, so it'll choose which direction to go. And the options are just what are available in the direction menu modal. Forward, reverse A, reverse B. I'm assuming one includes the final, like repeats the final note and one doesn't. Alternate, pendulum, random, Brownian, either way. I'm assuming either way is like a coin flip to choose whether it goes forward or backwards. Brownian, I'm assuming, is some kind of noise algorithm. Whatever, you can look at that in the manual. So every time it hits step C, it's going to both randomize the direction and it's going to randomize whether that actual aux event even takes place. So like it might just go up, it might just go down, but in the middle of the arpeggio, there might just be like a guy jumping in and being like, actually, we're going to cause some chaos for a second. And that's it. This has already gone on a bit longer than I anticipated. That was fun. I really like this set direction one, and I can see myself using the last step ones occasionally, but yeah, set direction, I'm gonna imagine, is pretty, it has already been pretty core to my Cirklon explorations in my own time. In my free time. Thanks for joining. I'm just gonna roll right on into my global control video as I check my clock before I start my workday. So, see you in a moment.